Hello, welcome to the How to Paint Clouds video. I'm Francis McCarthy, your painter in residence here. I'll be putting this out to everyone, and I'm hoping I have things set up so that I'm hoping I can pop my reference photo over here. But just the off chance I can, I'm just showing you what we're after right now. I'll figure it out. Anyway, you can see how that'd be messed up. You would hardly be able to see what I'm doing, but this is the scene we're going after. I think we're going to have a guest here in the studio, which would be my student Ash. He'll be watching me do this. And we're going after blue sky, a little bit of gray in the clouds, white fluffy clouds, as white and fluffy as I'm going to get. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Alright, so we're going to do this in 2 bits, and we'll be joined by the student in the second bit. So, you know, for this kind of thing, hopefully there's a little image of it there. I can figure it out. Otherwise, well, it's already good because, you know, the palette, right? So we're going to start with a little drawing. Now, a lot of times the clouds, I don't really concern myself too much with drawing. A lot of times you see me do drawings. I mean, I didn't draw the clouds at all, but we're going to do a little bit here. And, you know, I look at different brushes. Like, I like this brush a lot of times for what I call the drawing because it's tight. You know, I may start with that, but we'll get into something a little more floppy too. And just for the sake of whatever, we're going to get our bearings, however rough they are. Also, and you can see in the reference image, which I flashed at the fore, and hopefully you're seeing down here, I got a little strip of land in there, and that's just so, you know, we can sell it as a painting. It's not just a sky with nothing else in it. So, in fact, I think I'm going to start with drawing that. Now, let me play it up a little from where we're at. Yeah, and so you get some other general concepts and teaching from me here, you know, which is photo reference. It's just reference. It's not, you know, it's not designed to be copied. Don't copy your photos. You need to use them as inspiration. Also, you know, sometimes I hold my brush like this. If you're always holding your brush like this, like you might hold a pencil or whatever, you're not realizing the full potential of your brush. Yeah. So always another thing, keep like this is a 5x7 here. Good things to keep in mind. You got that frame rabbit there. So in this reference, there's actually like a little parking lot or something here. There were some cars in there, but I'm not too concerned with that. The color I'm using here is, it's going to be just plain raw umber today because I'm not that concerned with, a lot of times I do my own version of umber. Now, this kind of thing, this is very teachy, but you also have my members area, which is kind of the same thing, only there I'm doing my own work, you know, but I'm talking the whole time. I like to use swabs. I have oiled out this board. It's been prepped with 2 layers of transparent gesso. Yeah, so not a lot on the land here. Take off my glasses for a minute. I'm going to bring in a little black into my raw umber here. So this just keeps me working painterly, working creative, being creative, you know, hold your brush different ways, do different things. That's nice. And it's definitely influenced by So I do that rough drawing. I've got the reference, but like if just copying that reference alone is not going to cut it. You've got to, like this is a bunch of, just a bunch of bush, So you start looking for patterns in what it is you've come up with your initial drawing. That's what I do. And what I like to do in these kinds of things is bring in another. Look out for like the same sorts of repeating shapes. We don't need that. Just want some balance. And it's not so much about this landscape, of course, obviously. No, I paint at an angle. I do that for your benefit. And that's one of the reasons I make sure that, if I have these like horizontal divisions like this, that you can see how it was crooked. That's okay. I mean, what's down there is pretty vague. We'll mostly be working with. Like that. Good enough for now. Watch out when you have like the straight lines, like say, unless you're doing sunset, which is like sunrise on the ocean or that kind of thing. Obviously, you're not going to be breaking up those edges. Oh, there I might do things with the top bit with the clouds or with happy with that. So that's done. And just on the off chance I'm not able to do picture-in-picture, whoops, let's get that moved over for you. I know, not too much professional presentation, but we're getting there. Now you can see that I made all this bigger. Still tons of sky, not as much as the reference, but make sure you do things like that because cameras will squeeze things out and I tend to shoot wide. Most people do because they want to capture as much of the landscape as possible, but you see that in the reference we would have been up to here, and I've expanded that and I've made it more human scale. Anyway, yeah, like I said, hopefully reference image will be here. I'm hoping. Now, so I did a grid on this, and you might go, what are you gridding clouds for? The good question. You don't need to grid clouds. You don't need to grid anything. It's a big, simple grid, though. It just helps me get my bearings. which is what I want. I want to have some berries. But I've got quite a lot of artistic license with the clouds. And that's one of the things I want to communicate to you. It's like there's certain approaches that'll give you nice edges. Maybe I'll leave me in my floppy brush. I can use the same cloud reference over and over. Now when you have these like straight bottom bits, you want them straight. They need to be straight, but not razor straight, okay, unless you're doing some sort of graphic thing. This one a little more oil, a little more. This is all just, I do have that little tiny bit of black in there. Gray. One of the things I really want to show you today is how to play your grays off your blues. And I'm not interested in the photoreal deal. That's nice. Over here. So when you're working with the grid, I mean, you can keep going over and over. I might find that I'm working myself off of what I need to be doing. And this is the sort of clouds that a lot of people find challenging. You got this big round, and it looks like a fairly firm edge, and this is why I wanted to do a video, because one of my students been trying to do this sort of thing, and it's challenging. So, and I think clouds are one of the most challenging things. So I thought, well, this might be great to do. Well, these ideas pop into our head, right? You know, let's do a video. And like I said, I'm doing this for everybody. This is the kind of thing I might typically do just for the members area, but I've been wanting to do something that went out to everybody. And I don't care if you're into tonalism or not or whatever, you could probably, you know, do with some more tips on the clouds. Yeah. Okay, let's get rid of our grid here. So I did oil the board out with some linseed oil, which enables me to erase now there's a lot of things going on there, and we may or may not cleave to the reference that tightly. I don't really know. I'm just going to assume, because we're going to do some color mixing. And I don't want this to be a tiny... Okay, so see what I'm running into there? It's like I want to erase, but I'm not able to, right? I'll use my swab, and you know, it's pretty subtle what's there. I'll get a little bit of oil. Now, this works great for this stage. I'm going to break these up. The thing is with clouds is like you may see... Like in the process of working things out and rendering things, you're going to get things all tight and they won't look cloudy. And so, there'll be parts of this that I'm going to do. See, that's definitely back down the board now. Also, this is just a way of getting yourself plugged in, you know? This I don't love. I thought I had a line there. Oh, I must have got rid of it. I do like... Now, never have one of these lines or anything running all the way into your trees. Don't do it. There's a bit with the oil. Is that? Oh, there it is. I think we'll raise this up a little because we brought up the landscape. Yeah, so just like I was doing with those trees below, yes, there's patterns in those clouds. You could go nuts going, oh, I gotta copy that exactly. Take inspiration from it. Broke things up. They're a little vague. What are we doing here? Well, here we're probably going to have a little more sky than is in the reference. We'll see. I'm very careful about any of these straight line bits. In fact, where it's working with my composition, I'm going to deviate from the photo a bit. And so when I am deviating from the photo, I'm not looking too much. I'm going to go to my non-gridded one too. Okay, so this is the kind of thing you want to keep in mind with cloud. Do this kind of thing. Especially if you're inventing. Right now we're doing a bit of inventing. You should be doing inventing. Just because you have reference doesn't mean you stop inventing. You know, you want to invent using the reference as inspiration. I've been saying it for years. I keep saying it because I think this is something that the masters didn't have to struggle with. The limitations of photography weren't a problem for them because they didn't have it. But take inspiration from your photo, deviate from it. I like that. And it's okay. It's like everything's not delineated fully. Many things are just implied. Oh, now, always pick a light source. If you don't have one that's obvious, make one. So from here, obviously the clouds are hitting this side, so we know those are light sources coming this way. This is going to be quite amorphous, quite vague here, but so I've created patterns based on the inspiration, but I'm not too worried about changing things up. Okay, so that's it for the drawing. Let me pause this 1 sec, and then we'll do some color mixing. All right, we're back, and like I said, I'm just going to bank on having the reference there. I'll have to figure it out. You'd think, I mean, I've been using this little video program for ages. You'd think I would have figured that out already, but give me some blue tag. Not often you'll see me break out fresh pack of blue tag. Blue tag. That's what I use to hold up my boards. If you're going to do it though, don't use tiny amounts. Don't use little balls, because what will happen is your painting will be wet, and then it will fall, and that'll be very sad, because it'll be falling. Actually, what you'll have to do is just let it fall and then wait to do have to zoom out a bit to see the palette, so let's do that. And we'll do some color mixing. And, you know, it's the same thing over and over. Now, whoa, I just saw what the blue's doing. I just squeezed out that blue. You're running. It's the oil that's running. By the way, not the end of the world if blue's running into the black, because you can really think of black as the blue. You know, and the other thing is I could... there we go. Are you going to keep running? See that right? Well, just because they're color mixing, I don't think we need the whole reference there. I want you to see the... Come on in. Are you guys done?
Yeah.
Okay, come on in. Good timing, because I was just start the color mixing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're getting close enough so you can see what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
All right, so... Yeah, we're being joined by my student Ash now, who's also a member, a local member of the channel. Okay, so we have ultramarine blue. Now, you could work with any blue. You could work with cobalt blue. You could work with phthalo blue. Lately, I mean, my favorite is phthalo blue, but ultramarine lately in a kind of perverse way, even though I don't like ultramarine, I've been using ultramarine. So you can get there with any blue. So if you're going to mix this, we're going to mix the sky right now. I'm going to do sky blue. You start with blue. It's real important what color you start with. Like if you start with white, you'll end up having maybe too much paint because, and things will tend to be chalkier as well. So now to see the real identity of the blue, you have to wake it up with some white. So the first thing we'll do, and that's a ways away from where we are there. We're going to need a lot more of that too. I like to kind of just start by getting some white in there. That gives me the true nature of the color. And phthalo would be a little different. Phthalo's maybe a little on the greener side. The phthalo actually works a little better for skies, but we'll make it work. Plenty of people love ultramarine, so that's why I decided to go ahead and use it anyway. Get even more in there. Okay, and that doesn't look a thing like that. So obviously I'm going to try some of this buff. And buff white, buff titanium is what titanium is before they bleach it. It's already getting us a bit closer now. I'm liking it. Also, I don't worry too much. Am I hitting the exact blue of my reference? I don't worry about. And so in the drawing portion, Ash, I was just saying, you can see I have something that sort of resembles that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I taught you this stuff already, you know. I just riffing off of that. I don't care if I got to change things. Like, one thing I don't like is in the reference, like, this line here coming into the trees. You also notice I made the whole tree thing a lot bigger than in the reference. Because that just looks better. It looks more human, right? It's like more like how we see. Mm-hmm. This is a super wide angle lens, so everything gets made real skinny. So you always watch out for that. But no, I'm riffing off of this, so we're gonna riff off it. But I could use the same cloud reference over and over and over again, and it would look different every time. Yeah. You know. So there's a couple spots where you can see I have the basic idea, and I picked this reference because it has that edge that you've been kind of trying to work with there. You know. Yeah. We'll see how I do. All right, so at this point it still looks fake, and that's the thing. So one of the best colors for skies to get things looking cool, like if you go for the CAD, it's going to go green, and it'll go a little green with the yellow ochre, but yellow ochre doesn't have such a strong identity, so that's slightly green, right? But you can counteract that as you bring in white. The green aspects sort of diminish. You see how that's just kind of flatten things, and if it's flattened things too much, It's okay because it's a process, right? That's a lot of times when I want to, in fact, I wouldn't do the same blue all the way down. I'd be bringing in a lighter bit. In fact, I'm going to go and keep that there. We'll use that for the bottom of our sky, and we just bring in more blue. But getting that muddy color is what gives you colors that are more natural looking. So that's too dark. But we always know we can get like that super pure blue just from the tube, right? The tube color and the white would just give you the pure fake blue. So it's not such a bad idea sometimes to muddy things and then add in more of the pure elements like the white and the blue. Another thing we can do, which I don't really want to too much, is start bringing in the gray, because I want the gray to kind of have its own identity. So if I start bringing in the Mike's gray mixture into the blue, then we won't have a split. I kind of like that. I'm going to go a little more blue. And it's not the exact same color as the sky, but if you look at this on its own, and it's painted and the painting is the sky, you go, yeah, it's sky. No problem. So that's the kind of thing too. A lot of people starting out, it just make them crazy. I can't match that sky blue. Well, yeah, you could with Cerulean blue, or if you go buy a tube. A phthalo, like I said, might go closer, but I don't really care. It's going to look nice, and it's going to have integrity as its own painting. That's going to be, the problem is it's darkening it every time, but let's bring it a little more. And I hear you say I'm bringing in the pure titanium, because I know what that'll do with the blue, whereas the buff, you saw what happened when I put the buff in. It's neat. I mean, it's neat because it's muddy. Yeah, I like that. And usually, like, I won't mix every, like, I got two blues here, and they're related to each other. One would be the top bit of the sky, the bulk of the sky, the other be the bottom bit. And from there, I might mix in more white and stuff as I'm painting. Yeah. All right, so now for grays, oh yeah, there was this trick. Like if you, while you were painting, this is the trick I was telling you like the other day. It's like you can get a pretty neat kind of gray. Anyway, I didn't have I wiped off my knife, but you can get a kind of a neat. Gray, just with that orange effect. We'll start with that, which is bring a little more blue. We won't need much. Buff. You can see it's kind of weird and ugly, but as you mix it, that gives you a gray with a lot of life to it. That's a complementary gray. And oh, another fantastic color for skies. So I almost always use the same color. So it'll be whatever blue I'm using, whether it's phthalo or ultramarine or cobalt. I really was big on cobalt for a long time. Cobalt's very expensive, and honestly, I don't know, I'm just going to keep a little bit of that there. That's a nice gray, and you can see how that really works with that, right? So, and as you... you know, when we're talking, you know, you can see tons of different colors in there, right? Whether you want to get really like play off, oh, I see greens, I see da. I do a lot of that as I'm actually painting. But the types of colors normally I would use would be the titanium white, this buff white, the yellow ochre. I won't go anywhere near the cadmium yellow unless it's a sunset, and I may do a demo. I got another. This could be our blue sky one, but I'm going to do a stormy sky one too. Yeah. And then maybe a sunset one, you know. But there's infinite skies, as you know. But I think that might cover all the bases and make a little series, a little teaching series.
How do you decide like how much to simplify it and how much colour to add in there? Do you know what I mean? That's a great question. So I always have like a similar approach, right? Like this is, I'm going to mix my blue sky first. And that's the first thing I'm going to paint too. And then I'm thinking, oh, I know I'm going to want to, even if it's not in the reference, like this reference is just subtly lighter there, I'm going to mix that. And then when it comes to clouds, I was like, oh, well, I'll have a little bit of that orangey thing there. A lot of times I would just do that as I was painting. But this is a thing, like I was telling you the other day, I will invariably paint this too dark
and then have to go over it. But if there was a lot of blue sky, I would just paint the dark clouds first. And we're going to do that now. We're going to mix this color, right? So we'll start with some Mike's Gray, which has its own identity. It looks good with this, right? I mean, you can see it's related, and you can really think of black. Like Mike's Gray is made with black and white, black and titanium. We could use some of that just straight up. I'm going to want to dark. Oh yeah, before I finish, the other color I'm going to use in the sky, raw umber. Of course, you saw me use the orange as the complementary against the blue. Sometimes I might get into some alizarin. Colors I'd avoid would be like the burnt sienna, because that kind of color sort of belongs down in the earth, unless it's a sunset. I might use cad red if I'm getting some pink overtones. If I did, I'd use just a tiny bit, you know. The deoazine purple, a lot of times, in fact, we might just throw a little of that into the gray just to give us some interest. You got to be careful with the deoazine because it's sort of strong, but you can see how that's why I have the Mike's Gray on my palette, because I can take it and move it around very quickly and easily to make all sorts of different shades. Now that's not really in the reference, and that's already it looked kind of fake. But one thing we can do is use complementary color theory to balance that out. So we have the deoazine, we can balance that out with the complementary, which would be yellow. And you see it'll make a mud, but mud's not so bad when you're talking about clouds, because you know, you want natural color. So that's a gray that's been informed with a little taste of that purple, and so it's an interesting gray.
Could that go into the darkest of the clouds?
Yeah, that's where this one sort of after. So what a lot of like people starting out might do is they take that gray and they go, oh, I want that darker, I'll just add more black, right? But that's, you know, that's logical, but the fact is though that's flat and fake, and that's why a lot of people who are starting out, their paintings look kind of flat and fake. Where I'm always looking for, like, I'm getting inspiration from the reference, but I'm doing my own thing with the color. I like that, and that'll be too dark, I guarantee you, when we do the painting, but that's our darkest. That's not so bad. It's actually darker, but that's okay. I've learned that that's okay. It's all right. Second gray. You know, I might just use this just the way it is. I think it's pretty nice. What I might do though, so that's not really my nature though. My nature is always to muddy up the color, dirty up the color. So that's where I really love raw umber in skies and clouds, because it's like, it's got like, so we have kind of one that's a little cooler, this is a little warmer, right? And I think this value could go a little lighter, so we'll put in some of that. I like that. And so don't over mix your colors, by the way, when you're mixing. It's okay to have striations like that. That's a good thing. Yeah, the deception might be like if you're making a color like the Mike's Green or the Mike's Gray, you want those pretty thoroughly mixed, because those are doing an impression of a color coming out of a tube. Now that looks nice, and that's a little different from that. Last thing is, oh yeah, let's do this. I won't mix more grays, because do a lot of these grays as we're in the throes of battle, so to speak, as we're painting. Yeah, well, it is a battle, as you know. It's a battle, man. I mean, it's a peaceful battle, but you know, it's not easy to do. And if you watch my videos, I mean, I'm always calling it out, but the fact of the matter is, like, I mix most of these colors pretty quickly. I have ideas. I don't always do them the same, you know. But this would be my approach to a zillion different skies. Like, I didn't have to bring in the purple there, but I'm thinking, like, what can I do so it's not just flat, you know? I could do the same thing with a little crimson or little bits of this and that. And I want to play the cools, like the purple's a cool. I want to play that off the warm, you know. And that's the thing with clouds. You're always playing the cool off the warm, cool off the warm. And you can switch. You make your sky and clouds very interesting when you leave the values are consistent. Like, these are not that far off in value. But one's cool, one's warm. That's what's awesome. And also, when you see this bit of sky here, I'm going to show you how to do that, where that's a very subtle value difference, but obviously it's a color difference, you know. So that's one of my favorite tricks. It's just to start pulling the gray right out of the blue, and that gives you the water vapor feel. It's very hard to get, which is why we're doing this. Yeah. Now, I don't often paint these kind. What do you think of my clouds, by the way?
Like what you've sketched is cool as.
Yeah. The reference image pretty cool though.
Yeah.
And this is New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
Land of the long white cloud. We get some great clouds here. Okay, so we're going to go after, maybe we'll do 2 whites just for the sake of being, you know, teachy. Now I have this buff but titanium. It's awesome because a lot of times I would work with just my regular titanium to get that. In fact, I'll show you that, what I would normally do, because a lot of people don't have buff or access to buff. So here, because I'm going for light, I will start with white, where that wouldn't be the way to go with the blues, because you'll just end up with a giant pile of paint, and you know it's going to work against you. But we want a light here. So first thing I do, anytime I'm going for the lights, and most of our lights are going to be in the sky, is I got to dirty that up. Even if I want it to be very bright, I have to start by dirtying it up. And so my favorite color to do that is raw umber. That's why raw umber will be, it's a desert island color for me, you know what I mean? Because I can use it to, even if I'll just take a portion of this, put it off to the side. Even if I bring in more white now, I have an interesting white, you know, that's got some reality to it, where, you know, the titanium on its own is nasty. But I wouldn't stop there anyway. I'm going to want more yellow in my sky than that. So I start with the dirtying up process with that raw umber. And then little bits of this again. I mean, now, this is a place, if you wanted, I could look at that and see a small amount of cad yellow working. But usually for skies, I try and keep it to yellow ochre. Now that's pretty. And lots of times, this is the other thing, like that white is very white in the reference. In my painting, most of my clouds would be more yellow.
Okay.
Yeah, just because that looks nicer, it looks more painterly. In fact, I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest. Let's do a little darker version. So to darken it, if I put in too much yellow, then I've got this like yellow, it's too yellow. That's acceptable now, and you can see how that looks good with those. Let's do a little darker, and let's think about it. Obviously, we could bring in some gray as well, but yeah, let's bring in a little gray. So that's like adding a little black, really, because the gray is just made from white and black. So I'm thinking I'm going to play this off of my other white. I'm going to bring a little more yellow. And you notice what tiny amounts of paint I'm using, because when you're talking about mixing your lightest colors, it'll go very dark. That's quite attractive. Now it's sort of splitting on its own way away from these, but I think I can pull it back in a little bit. So like there's a sort of pattern here. Everything looks really nice together. This still looks okay with that, but well, that's maybe too much. Maybe not. The raw umber is weaker than a lot of these other colors. Yeah, I like that. That's going to be my dark light. And so these are this sort of move. I mean, one of the reasons I want to go and do a video of it, I just do this over and over and over again all the time. You know, I've sort of figured out. Now for the brightest white, I'm going to use some of this buff. You mean, if you don't have access to the buff, you could just keep chucking a bit of titanium and the yellow ochre in there to get your lightest light. Which you get to something like this buff anyway, but even here I'm going to bring in a little bit of that. I like the buff a lot. My friend, who's a supporter of the channel, put me onto the titanium buff. And it has the same code as the regular titanium too. It's just not bleached. That's got to go lighter and brighter. So, like, we're not that far off that. We're just more yellow. Now, this is the thing too. If you're getting in this thing like, oh, it's really yellow, it's too yellow, I'm going to keep adding white. What you want to do is like maybe take half of it, put it aside. I'm sure you've already been doing this, Ash, because you're smart. You know, put it aside, and then bring in your white. Otherwise, you're going to end up with giant piles of paint, and they're white too. So what can you use that for? Nothing, right? It's okay if you're doing that. That's pretty nice. I like that. Now you might say, Well, it's not that, but it'll look good in the painting. It will. And that's our brightest, whitest light. There are times you could put little accents of just the pure titanium and things. It's a personal thing. My thing is always to hold back. And I'm going to need a bit more of this than I have. So what I might do is go and bring this back in. You can see it's just a small difference, but trust me, if I hadn't taken that, a lot of times if I hadn't taken it aside, put it aside, I would just end up with a big mound of paint. We don't need it, so that's a good trick. Yeah. Except I'm probably going to do it again. I don't need that much, so I'm going to do this again.
It's another thing, like determining what quantity of paint you need for each colour.
Well, the lighter it is, the less you're going to be able to use it for anything else, right? I mean, and the light, I like that. That's a bit brighter than I might go, but we are doing a blue sky painting, so, and that's not something I do very often.
Yeah.
If you look around you here, I don't think there's even one. Yeah, it's not my thing. I'm more a stormy sky kind of guy, and that'll be fun too. I've got a really nice bit of reference for you on that. All right, so that's basically it. Colors mixed. Right?
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, wait, let's do the land. May as well. It's not the point of the lesson, but it's
Still helpful.
yeah, still helpful, right? And as you can see, like I really liked the reference you sent me. Those are good clouds, but then I was thinking, well, what am I gonna do with the cloud painting? I can't sell that. This I could sell.
Yeah.
It's still a cloud painting. But
see, I was anticipating you're just going to do it on a bit of paper.
Oh, no. Always be closing, right? Always be closing. We'll call this land of the long white cloud. And the next tourist that comes in here will be like, oh.
I like the clouds because they kind of look surreally, like a bit cartoony, but like cool, like enticing. Yeah,
and I was saying a lot of times in my like I would almost always draw or underpaint that. But if you look at most of my videos, you see the clouds. A lot of times I do nothing because so many times I'm working with colors, so I don't even worry about drawing it out. But I did here just so. And I really recommend it so that people look into that, because this is a way, like I did a little erasing with my swab. I dipped the swab in the oil and things like to get some of these effects where you're rubbing with the swab but it's not erasing. But this is like, it's non-committal. You can mess things around and go, oh, how am I going to get this composition right? And then you could wipe the whole thing off with a bit of oil and start over. So it's a great way to get yourself into the painting without like, oh, I've got all this pigment down and I want to change something or it's not working out. This is all very thin and very easy. And this was just a combination of raw umber and black.
So you'd use the oil instead of the spirits?
Yeah, I use the oil. I never use spirits.
Okay.
Never. Yeah. Now on canvas it might be a different story,
On wood, yeah.
Yeah. But even, you could use spirits. It all depends. Like if you were using spirits, it would have a different feel. But my thing with the spirits is like, sort of like, I wasn't taught by a teacher, but I had lots of books and things like that. And so the composition of your paint is basically, this is that with oil in it. That's it. So the thing that binds it is the oil. So for my painting process, I don't like to use spirits because I feel it weakens the paint film. And it could just be being unnecessarily tweaky. A lot of artists, what they do though, like especially if you're working on white, what's brilliant to do is do these washes with the spirits. I don't know if you've seen any artists do that. And then that's great because you tone your canvas and it's dry instantly. You can just go into paint. But that's going to be underneath everything. So that's, but I usually use oil to get that effect. And it's a drawing. That's how I'm always referring to it as a drawing. Yes, it's done with a brush, and yes, it's technically an underpainting, but my mindset is that I'm drawing. Yeah. All right, so let's go after the colors in the bush here, which is just a bunch of different greens. Now the basis of the greens that we're doing is going to be the mites green, which is Hansa yellow, which is also just acrylite yellow. What is the code? I don't know, my tube's so old now, I don't know if I can read the code. What is the code? PY42 or something like that. You get PY42 to PY45. It's a transparent yellow. It's like the yellow they use to do, it's a very permanent color. It's the yellow that they use to do crosswalks and things like that. So it's a great permanent color. It's not. It looks like Cad Yellow, but Cad Yellow is like super opaque, and this is not. Acrylite Yellow is not. So it makes a nicer green. That's the Acrylite Yellow mixed with black, either lamp black or ivory black. And I've had experts tell me there's a difference between the two, but in my process, I haven't seen a big difference between lamp black or ivory black. They're both what's called carbon blacks. So for this, we're going to start with, actually, for the darkest bits, I know this is sacrilege for a lot of modern painters, the darkest bits are going to be just plain black. Now there are times, like when I do my sepia stuff, I wouldn't do full black. I might mix black in with some burnt umber, which isn't on our palette. We don't really need it right now. In fact, in the absence of burnt umber, I can get a burnt umber by mixing the burnt sienna with the raw umber. You know, it's not a big deal. But let's talk about the greens. So our dark green, ooh, it's stiffening up. Oh no. So yeah, you can just massage. We're gonna massage the top off of that. I do recommend, like, if you got this paint that's getting all dry and nasty, it's like you might be on a low budget, but you're gonna get all these chunks in your painting, and so you might have had this brilliant expressive whatever, and then you seen that involved in your brilliant expressive stroke was a giant chunk. And then you got to mess up your brilliant expressive stroke by removing it, and then you get this secondary half-hearted kind of stroke, you know, which is maybe still acceptable. Painting's probably still saleable, but you knew you had something that was like, that was just right. So it's a bit of a false economy, because it's better just not to have those chunks, in my view. All right, so my dark greens. A lot of times I like to do, we don't have a lot of space here, so we don't need to make a lot, but I'll start with the Mike's green. And then for dark greens, let's get the black down. I've been working with lamp black because I have this big old tube of it that I bought a long time ago. It's just, I wonder what lamp black's like. And I've still got it. I'm still working with it. It works like ivory black. It's transparent. It's great for greens. So yes, I'll add some black, but I won't just add black, because that'll have the same sort of problem. It'll be too monodimensional, right? So here's a dark green. You might go, oh, that looks good. We're done. Let's keep working. But I'm going to look for a way to give it a little more interest. So what I like to do, and it ain't going to be by adding phthalo green. We don't have any real... The phthalo is just there if I want to make a green cool. We're going to add in the alizarin crimson. Alizarin crimson is going to be magical. And look, we can put a lot in. And look how interesting it is, how it will retain its identity as a green, even though I put in a giant glob of red. This is one of the big secrets to painting landscapes, right here. Well, maybe a little more. I don't need to make that too dark, though, because I will have like little dark bits of black underneath. So I want to make sure there's a spread. You know, when you're doing this pre-mixing like this, and some people don't. I don't think you do a lot of pre-mixing.
I just have decided I'm going to start now.
It's good because you know what's great about it is kind of, well, a lot of times you're painting out of your imagination too. So, you know, but if you're doing the reference thing, this is good because it's not do or die. You know, it's a great way. Like, this is a good way to get myself plugged in and working my way into the scene. And then this is a good way. Everything I've done so far is kind of not that committal. Yeah. You know, but it's also engaging my imagination. I'm starting to like break things down and think of the colors, and I think it's a great way to work.
I think it'll allow more creativity because you've got like the plan in place, so
you're
not struggling. Like,
that's right, you're not struggling. You've already kind of, it's not do or die. That's the other thing I've noticed with a lot of artists. They just start throwing colors down and it starts looking like a mess, and that's about the point where they go, I suck, I hate myself, and I'm not going to paint anymore. You know? Yeah. So this is all I call this is all I followed under in my teaching method. I call it supporting yourself as an artist. Yeah. That's what I call this. This is supporting yourself as an artist because it's pretty fun to do, pretty quick to do, and you can let this dry and come in later. Like, it's so, I've only got a half hour to paint. Well, you could do one of these and just let it dry.
It's more of a structure for the day, like
yeah,
sketch
yeah.
next color.
Or same thing too. It's like, oh, I want to waste a bunch of time, but I really should be painting. That's where a lot of times, like, oh, what I'm doing right now, I'm gonna go to lunch, but I know this is sitting here. So if I get distracted at home with other things, like, oh, maybe I will clean the garage, and instead of doing the paint, but I know this is sitting here with the colors mixed, waiting for me, and it's going to be dry and icky tomorrow with all this dry paint. So anyway, that's our dark green, and you can see you don't even look at that and say, oh, there's crimson in that, right? My other favorite thing to do is like, so almost the first thing I would do, like for the middle greens, that's Mike's green is just the base. It's seldom use it just the way it is. There might be a little spot there, right? I chuck in that, this is fake burnt sienna. Same thing here. There might be, well, you'd be amazed. Like, look how much red I can put in, and it's still holding on to its green identity, but it's interesting now, right? Maybe went a little too far, and that's why sometimes I might bring in, this is permanent green light, and I call this the green maker because it makes everything green. So I want to re-green, but I've re-greened with some complexity. I like that. I'm going to go with that. And then I'll just do, there's not a lot of light greens in here, but since we're doing a little quick green lesson, we'll just address how I might do the highlight green. So that might be my middle green. That's a little light for the middle green, but that's fine. And that's really because the Mike's green, the batch here was mixed a little light, you know. But it's okay, I can darken it as I'm painting. I don't worry about that sort of thing. But let's say I want to do, so I got some highlights, we'll just cover that right now. And we don't need a lot of paint since there's very few highlights. There's a little bit here. Two things I might add in. I'm always really holding off on the cadmium yellow because cadmium yellow, just to put a point on it, is going to just start making things like, you know, crazy, right? I mean, yes, that's a light, and that might be, depending on your reference, it might be exactly what you want, but in my view, it's better to do something like this, which is the cad orange. That'd be my favorite for highlights. And look how that's kind of rich. Now that's a little, what I'd say, still flat. So what I might do is just bring in some of this raw umber. And I love to bring in the raw umber just to give things complexity. Now that did darken it a little, but I have a plan, and that's it. I'm going to lighten it with the yellow ochre, and lots of times I use yellow ochre just for that job, just to lighten things a bit. It doesn't have a real strong pigment load. The orange certainly does, but you can see we have a nice spread here. That might still be a little, well, definitely for the reference we have, it's not in there. So I could probably bring it in line with a little bit of this. And in some cases, like you see that little color there, I might go ahead and say, yeah, okay, white, why not, right? But always hold off on the white until you cannot avoid using it. That's pretty good, actually. For this one, I think that would be good for that area there. And now it has chalked it up a little bit. And a couple of strategies for dealing with that would be, you know, a tiny bit more of this cad or yellow, you know, and there we got some life back in it. Yeah, so there's a little quick green lesson too. All right, so we'll do this painting when I get back.
Okay.
That's gonna be fun. It's gonna be totally fun. Yeah, unless I fail.
But just the sketch of the clouds is so cool.
Yeah, it's a good way to go, eh? So
Yeah.
We'll be back. Yeah, really gonna hate me. Okay, so here we are, back from lunch, ready to go. Yeah, so this is like, I also, you too, I think of my brush selection, you know, like I could maybe do a whole painting with these. I used to, and you'll hear in a lot of my older videos, I always say paint with the biggest brush possible. I probably told you that too. That's to keep you, oh, he snuck by. Curses. Okay. That's just to keep things painterly. Like, you don't have that problem. So, and you don't have tons of big brushes, but you know, you're paint. You know, but a lot of people will get real tiny strokes. Everything looks like rice grains and things.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think about, like, what's the most appropriate brush? Sometimes I'll take an empty brush and kind of visualize or imagine myself doing things. That feels a little small. Or this might get dicey as if I want to get any little tricky stuff, but I think we're going to go with that. And I always get a little oil. So if there's a blue sky, like if it's a sunset sky, I might just start in one corner and work my way down. But if it's a blue sky, the blue is behind everything. So, you know, we've already talked about that before. You know, just start with the furthest back and come forward. So that in this case, it would be the blue of the sky, then the gray of the clouds, which are over the sky, and then the landscape, which is over all of that. Yeah. And that's all part of a good edge strategy. Okay, so a lot of times I do my premix my color, but now I put a jot down. That feels a little dark to me. So we'll lighten that. So just because I mix these colors doesn't mean like it's set in stone. It's almost more, in a lot of cases, just getting my head plugged in, you know. And now that feels a little like, with just the white added, it feels like a little flat. And so a lot of times, one of my rules, good rule I think, is when you bring in white, always bring in another color. That's a good tip. A lot of times too, I do this with the side of my brush, in lieu of using a bigger brush.
It's interesting that you can cover a big area of space with just one color. I thought that was like a bad...
Oh, a lot of times it is. It is. Yeah, don't be a house painter, be a painter. Yeah. But I'll be bringing some other stuff. I'm not that far, but see there is some gray and things there. I won't play that over the top. But yeah, no, I'm not afraid to do this. Now you see here how... You see how that edge is working when I bring it in? It's like not a hard edge. Okay. I'm already starting to think soft. Yeah, because if you want soft edges, you can never put a hard edge. This is a little thin. That's the one downside about that. We'll come in with some of that darker color. Also in skies like this, you have to have a bit of a care as to the direction of your brush strokes. Some, like vertical ones, are usually best. Not saying always just do vertical, but we're creating some interest there, even though it's a plain place. But the reason I went in with more paint was because you don't want your oil paint too thin, because over time it gains in transparency. Okay. And of course we're all working for posterity, right? We're working for the museum that they're going to have it in down the road. Yeah, I like to do this. I do this a lot now, more and more. I use that side. I try and always, it's intuitive now, but I try to always change up how I use my brush, how I hold it, you know? Because it gets you to think, oh, I don't really want blue there. That's fine. I don't want to come. So, yeah, let's go a little further. One of the things I'm always talking about is modulating your color, right?
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so to modulate means, like in music, it would be moving from one tone into another tone. Like, ooh, you know? Or to move it smoothly, to modulate, you know? With color, it means that I'm going to be moving into lighter. So I'll be modulating that way, but also be modulating with color, and value. So now this is the one that's mixed. That's too dark. I want to go a little lighter. And that's okay. That's invariably what happens with skies anyway. Hey, I don't want any of it. Ash, you're going to put you on the short lead. Yeah, we want more of a transition here, lighter. And this color already had a lot of complexity in it. We just used it all up, but even in the reference you can see my blue's different, but it's working, right? Works fine. Also, this kind of stroke I like to do in skies is sort of And you notice all my edges are loose and expressive, right? Like they're all just kind of this, you know? I'm using the ends of the bristles
Okay.
to just kind of, like they have a technique in the, Da Vinci, they call it stumfado, which is this sort of technique where it's just the edges. But when I'm doing these strokes, see that bit there that's broken at the top?
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing for my edges. So I'm trying to, or either way, you know, so that they're soft. So if you zoomed in closer, you'd see that it's just, there's never anything because anytime you have that, first of all, you have to work to get rid of it, but you'll never get rid of it quite right. So if you want soft, airy edges. The other thing, and I mentioned this to you the other day, we got room. See, I stopped short too. Like, I want another transition. I want to keep modulating. What did I mention to you the other day? Oh, it'll come back to me. Yeah, definitely will, because I'm always repeating myself. Okay. That's nice. And that's like that buff, right? Now, I'm getting used to the buff. I'm still working with it. A lot of times I would have just brought in titanium white and yellow ochre for a similar effect. I want to be careful that it's not too light because I've got this white of the clouds, but that's my third modulation there, right? And it's important to stay loose, like that's just our reference. This is our painting, this is where it's at, this is where everything's at. So it's sort of an attitude of like, oh, that's what I was going to mention to you. All right, so we're thinking air and water. That's air and water.
I just thought,
Yeah, it's air and water. So I'm thinking that, you know, air and water. It affects how I lay my paint down.
Yeah.
All right, so at this point, like I do a lot of this. I don't know about you, but I wipe off my brush.
Yeah.
And then I leave paint in the brush. And we're pretty much done with the blue. The question is, like, if you look at the reference, which hopefully is in a little square right there. Here, it's all just gray. But that to me feels like a bit of a missed opportunity, like to have more blue.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to do, actually, instead of walking away. But I do that a lot, too, where I'll say in my videos, okay, we're done, and then I work for another 5 minutes, you know. But it's a mindset of like, okay, well, I'm actually going to go a little lighter too. There's not a ton of paint on my brush because I wiped it off. Be very careful with the straight bottoms of clouds. It's got to be like, you see how I approach that with my drawing. I didn't pull it all the way across. In general, I don't like anything straight running into trees at all.
Okay.
Nothing is going to make you feel trapped. Everything in the sky should feel open, you know, and always be thinking about that. Also, so this might create a bit of a bar. I might do this bit of, sometimes I do what I call scrubbing, which is this sort of thing. I don't know if you work with that sort of stroke yourself, but we may as well bring this over. Now, it's very thin, and I don't get crazy with it. Everything's got to be painted thick, but if I do know I worked extremely thin, it's just good to have an awareness, like it might be looking fine now. But, you know, in 100 years, it's just like a wash over this brown.
Yeah.
Or I don't know how long it takes. It could take. I mean, a lot of that might depend on all sorts of factors. Here, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I like, see that I'm kind of connecting things there. It's not really in the reference, but... And there's nothing to stop me from doing a lot of different things with gray here too. So, but this is my underneath and it's connected to that. And I think that looks good. So we're done with the blue portion of the sky. Yeah, this is raw and boring, but you'll see what we're going to do over there. We can do a lot of really neat things. I don't like that knife. I tend to keep my palette pretty much like I'm going to do a little palette maintenance right now. Not because I don't have any room on my palette, but mostly it's kind of a reset. Like that's, like if I had to go to the restroom or something, you take a break, That's a natural break. Sky in, clouds on top. One layer's all done. Also, if I clean up a little bit, you know,
like ready to go again.
it's just going to help me have more of a distinction with my other color. Where with skies, the trick is you want distinct, like we can tell when a gray cloud is over a blue sky, but there's a real relationship between the blue and the gray. That's why I won't be like rinsing my brush in the thinner or nothing like that. But I do think it's maybe nice to, I don't always clear my palette, it all depends. Some people don't believe in it at all, and that's a legitimate way to work. I mean, whatever works, everybody's different. But for me, it also gives me time like to not be looking at the painting sometimes. You know, I'm looking at this, I'm cleaning up, you know, and then I look at that, I go, oh, wait, you know, I forgot to do this, or I forgot to do that. Okay, so now if this was a cloud painting with no blue, which that's most of mine, I'm not that into the blue sky fluffy cloud.
Got a little bit going on.
Little bits here and there, but you know, more with the color. If I can get color in the sky, I always want to. That's me. And those people who were visiting me yesterday, I was telling them that. I was like, well, I do twilight paintings because that's where you can get color in your skies, you know? You put color. Hey! Come here. Come here now. He sees dogs. Yeah, come here. Let's just keep them on a short lead. Okay. Because it's too exciting seeing dogs, isn't it? Lay down. Good boy. No, lay down. He's a good boy. All right. He is a good boy. All right, so like here you got some blue. It's not that much blue, huh? I mean, it's a lot of times I might, you know, change things up with the orange, like I was telling you, if I was going from real blue, just to do it again, you know, real blue. Again, that's this color that's here. You know, it's a very interesting color, you know. That's perfect color in clouds. See? You can see it there. And that sort of way of going with the complementary thing, I think, maybe with a little darker. Bring in some of that. See how these edges, kind of the same value?
Yeah.
See this? Right? It's different from our reference, but you get the idea. It's just a shift in color, not a huge shift in value. But that gets that water vapor air thing across like nothing else. And usually I wouldn't be doing this step. The only reason I started messing with this is because I was doing the complementary thing. Getting back to what I was saying, if there's no blue, if I'm going to paint sky, and you'll see when we do the stormy sky, we'll just start with my darkest gray, my darkest color in the clouds, whether it's gray or purple or red or whatever, depending. So the thing is here, like, if I put my brush with all this into that, it won't be quite dark enough. So sometimes instead of cleaning my brush, I'll reset with, say, some black or something, you know, just so I know when I go here, I'm going to get something I want, which I'll guarantee will be too dark, but that's all part of the strategy. It's a little too dark. But I'd rather have a little too dark, and then I'll come over and make a little lighter. Maybe a little here. The thing is, like, before a lot of people might go, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, or that. To me, the way I've trained myself up is I think, no, I must modulate. I got to make a shift. Instead of more of this color everywhere, what else can I do? You know, by modulate, I usually mean a shift in hue more than a shift in value, right? So there's not a lot of other dark. I might grab. Well, there's only so many ways I can go. I could put in some blue. I got some of that. Actually, that's not bad. That's left over from that little blue painting over there. That's all right. I like that. I might go with some purple sometimes. You know, maybe crimson. These are the ways I might modulate or shift things up in the darks. So let's maybe put that's a little too dark. just pick up some pigment from here. And I always stop short. You notice that? Like I don't pull things too far. I was trying to give myself some room again to modulate. Put another color on top. Bring something else in. I don't want to go too crazy with all this dark, because if you see, I do think now this is like made this little mountain in the back. It looks like it was there. When I have something like that, I treat it like, let's bring a little bit of crimson there. I treat it like, I'll paint it without different type of edge, but color wise, I treat it like it was part of the sky. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit reddish purple. And we might put a little light on the bottom of that just to give it some life. That's enough of that. We're going to wipe our brush. Oil. This is a different color that we didn't even use because we automatically change it up. That's a little dark. I'll just go right into that. And it's also an opportunity to maybe bring in some more warmth subtly. It's a brilliance. That's why the raw umber is brilliant, because I can see some warmth there. Maybe a little more of that complementary one. And maybe some of that. I've gone too far. That's okay though. Like I will take my time mixing my colors, like until I get something that's, I know you're the same. It's floating my boat. There we go, like that. And that's a good value. So you see as I come in here, again, I'm kind of doing this with the edges, right? Mm. See that, how that breaks up at the top there? And alternately with thinking, oh, water, air, I think, yeah, I'm Picasso. I'm like Picasso. I'm even better than Picasso. Give me just enjoy. Yeah, of course. Well, you got to do that because you got to be enjoying the paint, and it's like, oh, that looks cool. That looks cool. But this is a good value because it's not that far off from the blue, and if we knock it back just a little, that's where you get some real magic because it's. Now here I'm doing like little X's. I'll do whatever, That's just what's floating my boat here. That's slightly dark. That needs to go just a touch darker. And probably what I'll do is just grab something. With skies, you got to pay a bit more attention to covering up the brown. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm liking that. Now, even before I was going here, though, I'm thinking, ooh, I want to modulate, right? That's just what makes your painting better. So what I'm going to do, though, is add some blue into that. Because look at, there's kind of like some there. And that just gets that water vapor idea across a bit, too. And it's a bit subtle. And generally speaking, we're working, dark to light now that we have the sky in, which is a middle tone, middle light. And so you want, now I was thinking too about this as I was having lunch, so you didn't ask about thickness or anything, but generally speaking, the darker the color, the thinner the color. Okay. The lighter, and you'll notice in the master paintings, I mean, I don't even know what they have at the museum, but they have some really great ones in their collection that are paintings by old guys, And they'd always, and that maybe it was because of that lead white thing I was telling you too, because they get that opacity. A lot of times you really got to lay it in thick.
True, because the white you often have a little bit of oil.
But you see the masters do that. They'll lay in those whites really thick, and you can't because white comes forward, and what's bright always comes forward. What's dark always recedes. All right, so here I'm looking for an opportunity, to like get that. There's yellow, there's transparency. I'm thinking of just throwing some orange in my gray to get that sort of effect. Now that might seem on the palette a little crazy, but here it's nice, eh? And it goes, like we were talking about greens in the sky maybe earlier. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it was my head. But green usually is not a great sky color because it belongs down in the ground, right? There's exceptions to that rule, and if you're going to go that route, then green's working out. So you see I'm pulling out of these. And I'm not having like a lot of care about my strokes. A lot of it for me is intuitive after doing so many paintings for so long. This is a nice stroke too, a bit of a swirl, right? And you can see where we meet the blue, our value is very similar. I'm going to do some of that too, because we want to have some bright there. But what we when I was giving you the verbal breakdown, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before or whatever. That's really bright white. But what I really will try and avoid is that actual white overlapping the blue of the sky. I have a little bit of a transition space, so it can peek in and around. And that again too will get the water vapor idea across. Here we go. That's where I was painting blue, but I didn't want it. And then you can do a lot of different things with pressure, as you know, as you found out. You can do lots of nice things with pressure. And so I don't want to overdo that color, maybe a little over here. And then and what's popping in my brain is modulate, bro. Modulate. So there's only so many, because I don't like to use, I might use burnt sienna. Before there was a long time I didn't have orange in my palette. I probably would have used some burnt sienna with some white or something, but orange is a little more flexible. So that doesn't look tremendously different from that, but it's a change up. And things like that is what distinguishes the pros from the rookies. Modulation is one of the main things that will distinguish you. Let's darken it. We're going to darken with the umber though. That's real pretty. Even a touch of black, because I want a little darker. And this is all making a little bed for the I don't even know what colors in my brush now. Yeah, it's not bad. So just as working from dark into medium into lightest, that alone will give you the airier feel. Okay, where are we now? Yeah, I like that. This is a little dark. Let's lighten that. I like how that crimson was looking in there, so I'm going to go a little further with that. So some of the colors I might use to modulate would be crimson, orange, yellow ochre, the gray, any blue that's around, purple. It just won't take. No, he saw you this time. You were able to sneak by once. He's bottomless. Adieu. So it's just opportunity there. I don't know what color I made. It had that crimson, and you don't look at that and say, "Oh, there's a lot of red in that," but there was quite a bit, and that's pretty similar to that. I'm holding off. Even there, I'm modulating from a warmer into a crimson or more crimson. Values too. That's a thing. It's like I don't want that. That's pretty abrupt here in the reference, or here. It's here. Because I'm going to figure that out tonight. That's too late. I'm always scared of these sort of transitions where you have a straight line. Well, I mean, I'm not scared. I'll deal with them, but you got to be careful, because if you look at the paintings of amateurs where they do that, the lines are too hard. they go on too long, and things start looking like they were cut out and pasted on the sky, which you don't want. So there's a lot of times just kind of work at it. And then I may even later on, like you'll probably see me when everything's filled in, that will end up being too dark. I almost guarantee it. But that's okay, we'll adjust it then. Alright, so I feel like I could get a little more into the, maybe we'll get a little yellow ochre here, which has a bit of a greenish quality to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I might counteract that. What's sort of sitting in the back of my brain is to bring a tiny bit of cad red. Because we all know there can be, but it's got to be subtle because this is not a sunset. Well, it doesn't have to be that subtle, but that's a nice color, and we haven't done that yet. Yeah, it's a pretty subtle difference, so let's go lighten it a bit. I'll do the orange instead. And there's lots of times, of course, pick up my glasses because then I'll start seeing the big. Oh, that's nice there. That's nice. That's very nice. And actually, I see some yellow there,
yeah.
something like that. Maybe we can do a little of that cad yellow. We've been good. We've been good. We've held off. So I'm always holding off from certain things. Like I always hold off from white. Not so much in skies, but that's nice. I maybe want a little more gray. So I try and get it looking pretty awesome with no white at all. And then half the time I might even leave it there. You can see the kind of move I'm doing. It's a variation on the scrubby move. Because I've set things up so nicely now, you know, it starts coming together.
This is where I'd usually panic and just ruin it.
Yeah. Well, but you see there's a progression, right? You may have you may be doing it intuitively, and I'm actually, it's not that much of that done, but I'm already thinking, how can I modulate this, you know? That's just how I operate. And then I go, oh, I don't have any, and it takes me a minute to think, well, what can I do? You know, maybe I want to keep it warm, maybe I have it really warm, so if I modulate, and I didn't love the cad red, so I'm going to do a slight amount. It's pretty subtle. So really the other thing is, like, you don't want to have the situation where you're constantly painting over things. You know, we're going to pop some. Yeah, it just gets lost. I don't like it. Excuse me. He's pulling himself back. Stop that barking, he knows. Alright, so the question on my mind is, like, I got this looks cool here, do I want it there too? I might do a little, and there I might say, well, I'll just kind of grab some of this other stuff. So it's not exactly the same. I'm always looking for opportunities not to, just to have a similar color, like you can see that's similar to that, but slightly different. That looks nice. Actually, this might be good just to get things started here, because it's not bad value-wise. So, because I'm gonna, I may fail. I fail oftentimes at that real bright white cloud like that. That's one of the most. That's why I picked this, because you might have given me reference that had that everywhere, but that's like one of the most challenging things to do.
Sure. With
clouds, yeah. And this is my strategy, as you know. Usually it's not an issue because I'm not painting that many blue skies with white clouds. And because this is a sort of designed to be underneath, I'm not too concerned with modulating right now either. And as I say that, I think, no, you must modulate. What I might do is go back to some regular gray action. You know, from my Mike's gray over here. Which is, I treat it just, oh no, there's too much other stuff. So, yeah, I should have waved my,
3565, black to white.
What's that?
Mike's gray, 35 white with 65 black.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, no, I try and shoot for whatever gives you close to 50%.
Okay.
Like this is like more like 45%. You know, if I can hit 50 where you couldn't see, you look at it, you say it's not too white, not too black, that's perfect, but that's rare. A lot of times it's too dark or it's too light, but I won't just keep adding paint because I don't have a giant watch that will dry on top and I'll end up throwing away paint, so I'll compromise. But that color on its own might be quite nice. Oh yeah, there's just so much of that in my brush. So this is a case where I might just reset my brush with something else there. I mean, I try never to really dip my brush in the thinner while I'm painting. See, I like that. That's just the Mike's Gray, but it'll have like its own identity as a color now. Right? It's not really anywhere else, hey? And it's cool. So we can play it off with some of that other stuff. Like that. Maybe it's time to go to commit here. Some things I kind of creep up on them, you know. This is already, I know it's already too dark, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. We've got some of that up there. Actually, we've got that. Get back into that. Now, this was a hill I didn't use. Might have been better than my little hill. When I debated, like, you see, I kind of have it there. I'm not going to get crazy with the hills. So here, I might resort to a bit of that stemfato technique where you're just kind of tapping it in. We're trying to retain some of that line. Most of it will be eroded, but because you sometimes, like if you lay in, here's a trick, you know, if you lay in a dark color, it's too dark or whatever, and you paint everything around it, and then you paint over the top of it with something lighter, that has a totally different feel than if you just painted it to one color. And I do that a lot, and without really, you know, calling it out. That's not bad. Here. Now, one thing I'm not, well, that's not good. So what I do there is, like, if I do that kind of thing, I'll wipe off my brush. There's not a lot of pigment, and I'll just break it up. I was thinking bring in some little clouds here. That's one of the more challenging things with paintings too, is you get smaller clouds towards the horizon. It can be a challenge to get that looking right. Now this is just doing some blending with the brush and very little pigment. Actually, there's no pigment. And that'd be an edge strategy. And you'll hear in the members area, I have, you know, I say it's 11 million edge strategies. I have a bunch. That's just one. Blend with a brush that's got almost no color on it, but isn't a naked brush. You know. And you can see how I always hold off too. Like I held off in that little spot there. What am I going to do there? I don't know. Maybe nothing. But I don't want it all just one color. So we're not that far from where we want to get into some lighter stuff. Let's go ahead and jump into our the darkest of the light. And I'm going to get some of that stuff, whatever might be in the center of my brush. That's some of my stuff I scraped up. I wanted, you know, this is going to already come off as like super light compared to what we've done. This is one of my favorite techniques when I'm doing there is a pulling. And for 90% of my edges, let's do it on screen, it's a pull. It's a pulling movement like that. So we had a color there, and I'm pulling into it or pulling out of it to get a nice edge. Especially critical with your trees over the skies. The paint here is quite thin, it's quite wet, so it's pretty flexible there. Not a lot of paint in my brush either. And again here, I could have followed through with that, but you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to want to modulate. Yeah, that's my thing. Okay, now I do think this could be the same color here. I'm still working up towards that brightest white. And you can slow down and have some sensitivity in certain spots. See how that value is very similar?
Mm-hmm.
That's just the kind of thing. Now this thing will be way too dark, but that's all right. You can see how those darks are getting way too dark now as we get everything filled in. Here, sometimes, I don't really know what I want to do here. This is a place where, because I've sort of deviated from the reference quite a lot, I don't have much of a guide, but sometimes I might do just say, okay, well, I'll fill it in with this sort of neutral blah, you know, and then as I come along later, maybe I'll have an idea. Here we're just doing some blending. When we blend, you always want to try, you don't have this problem in your work, which is really good. You don't over blend, but that's like a real big problem with amateur painters.
Yeah, I wonder when to blend and when to leave the strokes visible.
Well, when you blend like I'm blending, you know, by tapping and blopping and things like that. Never just
like
never just, you know, smooth them into each other, because oil paint to do that. It's very greasy. It's oil, right? And then that gives you your paintings a real greasy look. Like I said, you don't have that problem too often. I'm sure I probably called that off already. All right, so glass is off. But I'm holding off. I'm waiting to get into my lightest light. I'm thinking about things. I want to go and plug in, before I get into my lightest lights, I'm going to plug in the rest of these holes. I probably will do my lightest lights, and then I'll address that this isn't too dark here, these dark bits. And then I might bring in and do a little carving, you know, and deal with some of the places the boards are coming through, you know. Because this could be finessed a little better, or I could even get real subtle and jiggy, and you see how I could bring in more of air quality, like with a color like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll see what we're going to do. For now, I'm sort of at a crossroads where I don't really know what color I want. Well, here it's going to be white or light, although I don't like, a good general rule is like, avoid really bright things near the edge of your canvas almost always, because it takes people out of the space. You want to keep them in the space. Don't let them leave. I'm done looking at your painting. No, you're not. You're not done.
You must see my modulation further.
You must see. I'm modulating. Yeah, and that's a reason for modulating. Actually, just keep it interesting, right? It's variety that's interesting. Repetition. It's the same thing with the music. As you know, I do music. You know, repetition with variety. You know. And so right now I'm just scraping everything together and getting kind of the one color. Ooh. Getting the one color. And we may as well clean our palette too. Because I'll do that at this point. Like, I don't know what color I'm going to put in those. It might be this was every color I just did mixed together. Mm-hmm. Maybe that. Generally, too, it's a good time for me to maybe put my glasses back on. A lot of times then I'll start seeing things I didn't know were in the reference, because I'm pretty blind, you know. But it's good. It's like, it's a gift, really. When you're an artist, this nearsighted thing is a total gift.
Yeah. I found that this morning.
Yep.
Painting at arm's length as well, without glasses.
Yeah. Well, you know Monet, right? The painter. Mm-hmm. He was nearly blind when he was doing those water lilies.
Cool.
And he had
you could see it in his paintings.
He had his paintbrush on the end of his stick. Because he couldn't, you know, to see it all, it had to be that far away.
Cool.
But, you know, it didn't really matter. And it doesn't really matter that much for landscape painting. Like, I was talking to my friend Joe, who's carving, and he's getting older. You know, he's like, I don't know if you've seen some of his work, is very intricate little patterns. Mm. And he's like, oh, you know, almost couldn't see what I was doing. I was like, yeah, it doesn't matter, my line. Mm. You know, everything I did here was with my glasses off. And it looks good. Because the colors look good, the values look good. And we'll, you know, there's some people get hung up on the details. They say, oh, I got to get that edge. It's like, no, you get the feel of it. Okay, so what I'm kind of thinking here, and this brush is getting kind of big, but I may just stick with it. A lot of times that's what I'll do. Okay, so I'm thinking, yeah, these areas that I want to fill, I might just try a little of that blue, because that's not just blue, it's everything all together. Maybe put a little black in that. No, it's just straight up gray. But it's kind of a neutral color. Maybe I'll put some of this. I like raw umber because see, you can add raw umber to stuff and it just makes everything look natural and kind of dirty, but it doesn't assert itself. And I think that's the right color for this. Yes, could be a tap lighter. So that's some of that buff. Same deal here. I want sensitive. So a lot of times with my trees, and I'd probably do a whole video on painting trees as well, since it'll just make me a YouTube star, you know. Most likely what I'll do is I'll put this up for everybody for a week or two and then make it members only. Because it's keys to the kingdom stuff, you guys. It is. It is good stuff. Okay. Man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I still don't really know what I'm going to do in this area. So there are times where I don't know what I'm going to do. I just paint. You know.
Mindfully though.
Well, always, you see I'm sensitive.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, there's mindfully, but I guess it's more that I'm just giving my conscious mind a bit of a break. And that's another thing. Ooh, I don't really like that. The painting, as I see it, there's this constant oscillation between the conscious and the unconscious, or subconscious, or whatever you want to call it, right? There's like painters that are always like, oh, I'll put this stroke there, I'll put that stroke there. It's got to be give and take, you know, between the part of your mind that goes, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and the other part that just does things.
Do you think that comes with a level of mastery though?
Yeah. But that should be, like early on, you should let it happen. That's what I'm trying to say, you know, like sometimes it might be okay to let the painting get away from you, or just start laying in some, I know you do this, you just start laying in some strokes and then making it work, you know. Something to be said for that. There's something to be said for a certain amount of surrender of control. But you know, it's yeah, you're gonna just do a bunch of crappy paintings if you go too far with it. You know, it's got to be a balance. Yeah, this might be the one. It might not be right, but that's some pretty tricky stuff here I'm trying to pull off. That's that. Pretty ambitious, but I can get away with it because it's wet on wet, which is one of the reasons why I really love oil paint, that you can do this wet on wet stuff. Very hard to pull off that sort of thing with acrylic. Yeah, like that. We're almost done filling things in, and this would be pretty good color down here. And you can see hopefully how radically I've simplified the sky, right? Compared to all the things. But there's complexity in my strokes. I've replaced the complexity of nature with complexity in my strokes, which is not most of it intent. I don't decide, oh, I'm going to go this, I'm going to go that. Just, you know, it comes a lot of it from experience, but and trying different things. So what I say to people who don't have the experience is just try, look at, if you watch me, I'm always changing up how I hold my brush, right? And that gives me different strokes. And that's one thing I've seen with a lot of painters starting out. They think, oh, this is how I hold a pencil, this is how I hold a brush, you know? And they'll do the whole painting just holding, well, this is a perfectly valid way to hold your brush, but you should change it up too. So like this is sort of boring and mundane here, so I might start injecting a little stuff on top, because I don't like bars. I always look for bars, you know, anything like that, you gotta have an awareness of it, break it up. Oh man, I think it's time. I'll go and put some of that there too, because this is kind of a value like the sky, so we're gonna come in with some light there, but I want the lights on top. That's subtle, but actually you can see a lot there if you start looking for it, right?
That's what I wonder, like what do you ignore and what do you actually incorporate? Because you can keep looking and see more and more.
Yeah, but you know, like I have parameters. Like I don't know how long we've been painting, but usually it's like I move along. I just move along.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't say, oh, I must do this in an hour or whatever, but I just know from all the overworking. I mean, overworking was natural to me, very natural to me. So I just move along, and once it's like I enjoy the expressiveness. Like it may not be as accurate, but at least it's expressive, and that's one of the tips I gave you early on. It's like if you can't be accurate, you can be expressive. At least we know a human being did it. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. So what I'm doing now, as you can see, I'm still holding off on that white, right? I'm still holding off because before I start doing that, I just want my other ducks. I'm gonna, oh, that's too dark. I'm just gonna plug in a few places where I see board peeking through, and it's not like you got to get crazy about that stuff. But if you notice it, and that's all in the process of working along too, you know, moving along. And then, so it's a lot of it too is about respecting the cool thing. Oh, that looks cool. I like that transition. Well, then keep it, you know. Here I wipe off my brush, just an edge strategy, just to soften that out. But it's all about kind of respecting what's there, improving what needs improving. I think I'm pretty close to time to come and get these lights in. And this is it's always a bit of a shock, really. Because that's way brighter than I like to paint. And that's why there's stuff in my brush. But I'm not going to back. It still seems super bright. Oh, let's be bold. Let's do this first. So even though I'm going over the blue, I'm changing my pressure, and I also have that little bed of other color wet paint there, which is helping support me. And you notice that I'm not as bright there. And again, like I say, a good spot to lay things in a little thicker. And seeing the strokes is groovy. That's one nice thing about the lead white, really holds a stroke super well. I don't know if you've noticed that. But titanium can too. We're probably going to go a step brighter, but I'm going to keep moving. And this is just pressure differential here, where it's not as opaque. Because I know I have wet paint underneath there. And that's just an edge strategy where I'm dancing a bit. That's good. And you can see that's too dark now. Let's do the same thing up here. And that's not as white as there, but we're gonna go a step wider. We're working up to it. Now it feels like it wants to be more yellow. I like this sort of move for this kind of thing where it's kind of a blendy, directional sort of thing. Jerry. Yeah, and I'm planning on coming with a little more white on top there. Sometimes, like, you can see I have like these edges, they're all like, and then I brought a stroke through to kind of cut through, sort of created, you know, there's a lot of things. I mean, you could play with that stuff endlessly, and it's not like I do it with, it's not like I get too tweaky with it, you know. Oh, by the way, a lot of old people don't even know what you mean when you use the word tweaky. That's nice. I don't like these horizontal. I'm going to stick with this kind of thing. And then wipe the brush off. So it's nice, it's a bit strokey, right? Which is nice. Some people that's a style, okay? What I'm going to do though is wipe my brush off pretty well. And just you do some smoothing, but in a very respectful way. Or I'm respecting a lot of the differences, but everyone's got a place at the table. Like that. Also in some spots there's still board color peeking through. And that's almost verging on that greasy sort of blending you can do with the, but you got to know, I mean, it's just one of the like I was saying earlier, arrows in your quiver. You know, you've got, but like I'm still holding on to some independent strokes. It's not like you don't see any brush strokes there at all. And that was very popular with several schools of painting where you wouldn't show, to show strokes, they would have called you an amateur. You know, they would have, you wouldn't have had a show at the salon. Because you're not cleaning up your strokes. I really want that to have some identity as a blue. So I'm going to just go back to the trough for some actual blue there. Because I've lost that. But there's enough other things going on now. I want it to have some identity as a real blue. Which I can always get just with blue and white. Thrown into anything I have. And it'll be fairly complex. Let's go lighter. I know, so remember if you were, when I was doing the sky part, I was hesitating to go too light there because you wanted the clouds to be lighter. But now that I'm going to go a bit brighter on that white. I think we can. Especially that area is very boring now. You know, it's very stagnant. You see this spot here?
Yeah, and you're going to add brighter white.
Yeah, and there too. Yeah, because that's going to get us in a payoff. But I'm working up to it. Now here, I might just do. I don't like how barry this is, so I'm going to do some transitions here.
On a bigger canvas, it's the exact same thing, just with bigger brush.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the reason I did this is because I could do this in a quick lesson, you know, but I was thinking of an 8x10, but I didn't want it to take over my, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's all the same. Actually, you could do it with a small brush. It's really an attitude more than anything. Like with this brush, I actually have a brush that's that wide. You saw me. You know, I'll just start holding it like that and just piling things in. But it's really more of anything attitude. That's a little harsh. It's a little harsh, bro. So let's reset. We're just getting us some black and reset a little. And that's a bit of that maybe stimfato, you know. Just messing with the moving around the wet paint, but in a respectful way, a conscious way, you know, like respecting the differences and seeing your little marks and the little things that are coming out nice. And also there are times you want to flatten everything. Like this is a little, it could do with a bit of flattening, and the way to get the flattening is through some blending. But in a sort of, so I might do it with the crisscross, where there's still some action, there's still some modulation, also some flattening. That's one of the reasons I'm deep into the Ines project, is because he's a master of that flattening, but his stuff looks great. You know, a lot of times when you want to just flatten things, I'm not going to mess with that. Okay, so before I go for the bright, I think that's too dark. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just the way it is. But, it's not so bad. You come over, it's like just the way it is. I could set out to everything perfect and not, it's not dark enough. What are you doing? His ears bothering him. And then every now and again I think, oh, can I pull another reference? What would be? That's nice. And it's a little messy. It's okay. It's good. It's all good. We want to see, like, the analogy I've used before is like when you build a house and you left some beams, and maybe you paint the beams black or, but you can see how things are constructed. That's a good way to go with painting. Yeah, I like that. So now the thing is this is a place where I'm actually going to rinse my brush out, because to get that clean white, I know it's just going to be an uphill battle.
That's the first time in the whole painting I've rinsed your brush out.
Yeah, I don't believe in it. Not too much, but you got to do it when you got to do it. So, and when I do that, I was going to the oil, and then I reset with the oil. Okay, so that feels half-hearted. It needs to be brighter, and we're going to just do it. Let's do it. I think we'll mix some buff with some white. But you got to kind of creep up on it. Maybe this isn't even the brush for the job. So far it's done pretty good. I feel like I've got to bring in some blue too. I don't love that shape very much. It's not too bad. I'm working with it. I'm trying to break it up. And at the end of the day, maybe there'll be things in the painting I don't love. Doesn't mean doesn't mean I won't sell it. Doesn't mean I'm not done. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I know you know.
Cool.
We all know. No, we all know, right? But, sometimes things go really awesome, and then other times you've got to just live with parts of the painting that you don't love. It's like, it's okay. It's all good. Because that's part of being a functioning perfectionist, not a dysfunctioning perfectionist. And those people, I've had them, they're immobilized. They can't work. Because all they see is the flaws. Not like that. We'll get some other spots here, right? This is knocked back a bit. Sometimes I'll bring in these little dots like that, but it's just to kind of connect them. It's not often that I'll leave a little dot on its own. This can be a lot brighter. And just realize, like, when you're doing this stage, it's going to be a compromise. It's not going to be completely accurate. He's a funny guy, isn't he? To pay copyrights on that. Okay. Oh, this is a great opportunity too. Here's like, see, there's that little bit. And we have this bit that was kind of real light when we put it in. Now it's like way less so. But we can modulate a bit there with value. Like, that's cool. Oh, little glints like that. That's things we can pull off the painting. Now that's one of the toughest things to paint. It's like when there's a bright edge on your cloud like that. I recommend just taking a crack at it and then, living with it. This would be nice to make brighter too. And so a lot of times, like, I don't know what I was going to do down there, but now there's paint there, so it's kind of boring. Don't do it. So I have an aversion to very round things. You know, like
Lollipop clouds.
Lollipop cloud. That's why I added a little bit there. I like that better. This we're still working with. I think we need to bring in some blue though. So we have lots of white in our brush, so we'll just bring in some blue, some proper blue. And it doesn't need to match exactly. A little oil. You can see I'm pretty judicious with my oil use as well. What I was taught, and what I believe pretty much true, is like the paint as it comes out of the tube is usually your best consistency. Not close. Okay. Oh, all right. Sometimes too, it's better to mix your paint with a knife. I just need an actual, honest to goodness blue that then I modulate. Change up. That's better. And I just hit the value. That's the plan. So I don't often do this, but I don't really like that gray edge too well. That kind of. Well, there's a little tiny bit of it there. So it's kind of interesting, maybe bring in some more blue just to help define things now. We've got the soft edges, and so if we're respectful of it, I like that pretty well. I've been thinking about this for a little while too over here, like that. It feels a little straight, like maybe I want some, you know. Also, you see after a while I'm starting to take on like kind of a certain stroke or whatever, like a little, you know. I don't worry about it everywhere, but it can help reinforce things, I guess. So there I'm thinking wind, I'm thinking, you know, a little swirly stroke. It's very subtle, of course, but like that feels a little too. So a lot of times, like, I don't like things that are too, like, look at me. I know the painting, that feels too dark in that spot, which sucks because I'll have to clean this brush a bit. But, oh, this is, oh. That's what you get for being cheap. You get your fingers covered with paint, right? But this is where that technique is great. You gotta switch from blue to gray, right? Boom. 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 It's gray. Come on. Come on, don't make me into it. Oh, you gotta add some white too. But that's pretty great. That'd be cool. I'll switch from blue to gray, although that's a little now, it's a little light. Get a little darker. So this feels too dark to me now. And what I probably would do is just lighten that bit as well. Stop it, Jerry. We're pretty close to done. I could get, now all of this could be totally smoothed out if that was part of the style that you were working in. This is, you know, pretty much how I'd leave it. Because it's a painting. It should look like a painting. I think it should. It's better to leave things less, especially like I know I had tendencies to overwork things. Less so now that I've been doing this so long. And after, you know, hundreds of bad paintings, you know, overworked, where I'd look at them and I remember, and then I have it recorded with video too, like where it went through a much better space. it was better, and then I didn't stop, and then it's not so good. I want to get that lighter. I'm having a problem. There we go. Might be a spot. That's a little boring there. Maybe bring it a little more. I can see something in the reference too, right? Oh, something. You could keep going and maybe refining it, making better. Some dudes definitely do that, and that's all good. For me, it's like probably pretty good to stop here and then just do the trees, and then call it a painting. This is now too dark. And there I might just, whoa. Things aren't going the way I want. I don't mind a little bit there. I just don't want it. I don't like that. I'm always sensitive to those sorts of things. They catch the eye. So I'm always thinking, what's going to catch the eye? Now, the bigger the painting, of course, the more little diddling and fiddling you could do down in these areas. That's the other thing too. Like I'm working 5x7. It's better not to get nuts. First of all, you're only gonna sell this painting for $100 or so. Not that you could polish it up into a little gem. Oh, I've done that actually. I would say if you're gonna get real polishy and gem-like with the small paintings, then make sure you put them in pricey frames. I sold one of my show. The frame cost me $100, and the painting was a 4x6, even smaller than this, and I sold it for $350. But the frame, I knew why the lady bought it. The frame was like amazing, It was like one of this ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I see a few like areas where my transitions aren't so great. Okay. I mean, the transitions are good. They're just too chunky. But I want to leave some of that. I don't want to over clean, over perfect. Yeah, I'm pretty good with that. I'm pretty good. So while I've got this color in my brush, I'm going to change brushes for the foliage. It's a good little trick to, like, when you have something dark like this, that's a bit of a harsh edge. It's also too dark. But the first thing I would do is like have a little light coming down, That one might indicate atmospheric haze or whatever. It's just an opportunity. Sometimes it doesn't work out. The fact that that has a different edge and everything else automatically will read as a little mountain or hill. That's nice. I like that. Yeah, I like that. And one of the ways okay, when you know when to stop, it's like, oh, well, if I mess with that, I'll lose that. Okay, well, then don't mess with it. One thing I do want to do, and I've got to be careful. Here I'll even check what's in my brush. I can just very carefully use the prickly end of that to just give me a little nicer transition. And I wouldn't carry that through the whole painting because it's better to see the architecture. It's better to see the strokes. But there are some spots if they can't. So that's a great thing about not having the glasses. Like this has been bothering me for a while. I like some of it, but I don't want too much of it. And so, like I taught you before, it's like think of how like a raven will see a shiny thing. Think of people looking at your painting like that too. Like something like that's going to catch people's eye. Is it right? It looks good to me, But little bunchy pockets of paint here or there that might be attracting attention where you don't want attention. You can just soften them and quiet them a little. A lot of times too, you'll see me do it with the end of my knife. I don't know if you've tried that either.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of thing. And that's really a good strategy because it's more strategic than the brush. Be careful with it though, because you could smooth your whole painting out into nothing like this. But it's really good for some things, definitely. And a lot of times what I'll do is like, I'll do this sort of picking when it's not on the video because it doesn't always show up. Just leave it there. That'll come on. There we go. Because it's sort of boring, you know. But you can look how much blending I can do like this, right? This is just another edge strategy. Little bits of blending like that, where the nice thing about this is it's more of a potential, less potential for you to ruin the painting because a brush is going to go psst,
yeah.
Where this is pretty strategic. This is another little area which kind of, yeah, like that. And you can do quite a lot of that. And actually, I think it does have a nice effect. I try, usually these days, I don't worry about it. You know, I just do another painting. You know, I leave these sorts of things, but it's good to know you can do it, and it's especially good for people that, you know, you're not going to be, it's going to take some time to get used to all the chunks. All right. Yeah, I think that looks good. What do you think?
So cool.
Now, this is all a bit dark compared to that, right? Is it too dark? It's hard to say.
It's a different vibe, though.
It's a different vibe. I'm inclined to leave it, you know, and I think it works fine. But were I to like just put my glasses on, I'm looking at this, I'm looking at that, we'll go, I could actually go in with another lighter tone and give it a pass, you know.
Are you gonna do that?
Yeah, I'm thinking of it because it feels a little dark, you know? Feels a little dark to me. Wouldn't actually, surprisingly, it wouldn't take that long. So that's just some of this, all the colors mixed together with some raw umber. Lighter. Pardon me. Whoa.
Would it work if you left everything but just went into the widest, brightest bits and made them whiter?
Nope.
No?
Nope. The problem is the darkest bits right now.
Oh.
Like, look at that in comparison to the value-wise of what I have there.
Yours is like a brewing storm, kind of. Like
Yeah, but it's okay. It's actually acceptable where it's at. I'm going to try and
Yeah.
effect a small change. It's not so bad because it's going to have a bit of a unifying effect as well. Mostly I think it's there. And we can even go a tap lighter at that edge.
True, it kind of looks like it's raining on the far mountain.
Yeah. That's what you want. You want that feeling of water, you know?
Yeah.
It's quite common though for me with clouds, especially blue sky, gray clouds, or gray and white clouds. It's very common for me to have to do this, to have to go in and make the darker bits less dark. And it's a really good idea because you don't want anything too dark in your sky. So, you know, there's no sin in having to adjust that. Yeah, you might lose some stuff, but most of my cool stuff is in the lighter / medium areas anyway, so this isn't do or die. And I'm using sort of a scrubby whatever technique, infinity technique. 'Cause I'm doing like a little infinity sort of strokes. so it's nice. It's unifying things a little too, which is it's nice to have tons of chunks. Some guys really get into that. They all the gum I think since you've been alive has come in little boxes, but you used to have something called chiclets in the old days. They're little squares of gum.
Okay, you
Called
told
a
me about them
chiclet.
before.
The chiclet, yeah. You got the chiclet school of painters. Everything's like chiclets.
Yeah.
Little squares. That looks definitely better with that lighter, I think. I might improve and enhance my transition a little here, since everything's taken on kind of a samey. I might go a little lighter, bring us in a little further. And I've also kind of arrived at kind of a strokey thing I think is working. A direction that's playing off the light, which is this kind of thing. And of course, every now and again, you can do a counter stroke. You can get nuts. Yeah, you get totally nuts. Somebody stop me. Somebody stop me. Now this sucks. I'm out of white. I have buff though.
Wait, are you fully out of white?
No, I just don't have any on my palette and I'm too lazy to get any.
That's me.
Me too.
I hate it all like shit.
That guy
my
Sheehan I put you onto. I think he had giant piles in his paint for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of your old videos I was watching last night and I just had this intense anxiety because you had your palette vertical and the big blob of white was about to fall. It was slowly falling.
I know, it's so funny.
For like 20 minutes and then you were like, wait, hang on, I need to pick this up.
Yeah.
Thank God.
That looks better. It was too dark. But what's cool, I mean, is it sounds silly, but I say, okay, I'm done. Then I could clean I did this or I did that. And I go, oh, it's a little too dark. It's a little too dark. No, we just adjusted. It's all good. And it's all in the spirit of just knowing, being respectful of what's there. But if it's too dark, it's too dark. You got to fix it.
So if it's too dark and you're making it lighter, you're painting wet on wet.
Yeah.
Would it be kind of subtly mixing on the paint?
Oh, it is mixing. It's totally mixing. Yeah.
On the board.
Yeah, it's mixing on the board. Yeah. Yeah. So the thing you got to watch out for is like where I'm getting these little pockets now of other colors, which I'll leave some of it, but you don't want too much of that chunkiness. That actually in the landscape portion, it mattered very little at all if I left that kind of thing. Or if the cloud. And there's a lot of times too, like it's very small, but you'll see me constantly tamping paper towel. Now I would have done that at a little earlier stage, If I do it now with that thick paint, it's just going to mess everything up. And I'm pretty happy with where it's at right now. I do see one thing that bothers me here. It's just, it's like kind of being patient and respectful, and then, but realizing like so there's a dance, not just between the conscious and the unconscious, but between the editor and the creator, Like the editor is the one that comes along and go, okay, that is spelled wrong, and you don't put a period there, you don't have syntax like that. It makes no sense what you're doing. But we know what you're trying to say, but when you're trying to say it, you don't worry about that stuff. But there's an oscillation that goes on between the one going, oh, this is a little wrong, this is right. I'm going to try and do a little subtle paper towel stuff. I could run a risk with that, but I'm going to be super, like a lot of times I will just grab any old paper towel and start tapping.
Yeah.
Here, because I basically like what I have, I'm going to make myself a little bed.
What's the intention of doing this?
You'll see I have a little bit of a smoothing technique.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of unifying. It's sometimes very subtle. A little bit, mostly it just unifies and blends. Being pretty delicate. You gotta be careful because you pick up light colors and move them into the dark. But no, I do like that better now. It's just kind of pulling things together. It's just yet another smoothing technique. It's one of the big questions I get asked on my channel. What are you doing with a paper towel?
Yeah.
It's a little bit it's flattening a bit. I like that. I like that. I don't want to do too much of it, but that was not good. That was not good because I lost something I like and I don't have any more white. Fine, whatever. All right, let's go do the landscape bit. Looks and tails. Clean as a palette. Now another good thing you can do is like if you just want to practice cloud paintings, just do like the ocean.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
like ocean there.
Yeah.
Just gotta, but I would try and find reference that has it kind of.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like so if I was looking for scenes to do studies after, I would look for that. Like this worked for me. Like this was in my collection
Okay.
of photos I took. And this is a place I definitely do clean the palette, not just because I'm being whatever. You really don't want any white. Like, you can have white for days in your sky. That's what I was talking about too, when I'll take a little break and take my eyes off of things, and I'll see things that need to be, you know, subtly addressed. If you do that technique, make sure there are times you definitely want to wipe that knife off. So, like, that's somewhat dark. The way my strategy, and I'll probably do a whole tree painting too, just for people, because I get that too. You paint trees.
Can I watch when you do that?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Well, no, it's helpful to have you here because you're asking some questions and stuff.
Oh,
so,
cool. Yeah.
So instead of me just talking to myself,
I
as I always
respond
do.
best to this teaching because I can see what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's better than all the abstract talking in the world, eh? A lot of times too, like you got my little phone book here, like I'm gonna just make sure there's nothing in my brush. A few other things pop. Something just hit me. But at this point, like I'm being increasingly respectful of what I have. And so as I'm fixing little things, little pockets, little places where things pile up, and in micro ways catch the attention, you know. But I've taken that's one of the reasons I like cleaning my palette. It's like, I've taken my eyes off it, I've changed my focus and attention, and when I come back, the editor has a chance to say, hey, what about, like this, see this little pile there? It's a tiny thing. But if I just subtly move that a little bit, that's a little better. Little things like that, little ways you can improve things without getting immobilized, without getting, crazy. Okay, so, oh yeah, is this the brush I picked? I guess it is. This was my drawing brush. A lot of times that'll become, so I always have a dark brush. Yeah, I know you're doing this too, right? Dark brush, light brush, foliage brush, you know. Like I'll have one brush. I did the whole sky with one brush, basically.
Do you do that often?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't worry about the sky. Everything in the sky is like interconnected. It's all like that, you know. So I don't worry too much about it. Where it's not so. I mean, I'll do it sometimes. Entire paint with just two brushes, but usually it's maybe 3 or 4. Almost always I have a dedicated dark brush because once you contaminate your dark brush with anything medium, you know, it just won't give you a nice dark anymore. Yeah, no, I'm happy with that. See if I can blend that in, yes. It's just little places to catch my eye. I don't mind. That's a bit flat, but you know, it's what I like. That's good. Okay, about keeping things straight. You've heard me lecture about that. It's just important. It's important because you could have everything brilliant. Something like that will be your undoing. This is just straight black. which is a big no-no, is verboten. You can see how much darker that is than what's there. But you lay in your darks first, because you want them behind, you want them underneath. And when you try and put them on top, you know what happens. They're half-hearted, right? They're not clean. I don't mind. I like crisp darks. Some people want, if you wanted a muddier dark, you could add in like some burnt umber, or if you do have something straight here, always break it up in weird ways, whatever you can do. I'm going to do some dark here too. Some trees. This is why I like landscape painting, is because you can just make stuff up, you know. And it's very different. Like when I was an illustrator, everything was delineated, folds, everything, you know. I really like things dark in the corners. As you know, here I invented this. You know, but then I'm playing off what I invented with my drawing, right? Because it's a bunch of nothing here. So we'll put some stuff in there, and then we'll keep going as we go. Also with the black, you can get, with more oil, we have a thinner black. So here, this is like going to be dark. There'll be a bit of board coming through, which is fine. And I worry less about the transparency of the oil paint with the dark colors, because they're dark. You know, I think it becomes, the lighter something is, the more opaque you want it to be, generally speaking. Okay, this area is a bit blah. Like, I don't like bars like that, so I'm going to break it up a little right now. There's not a lot here, so this shouldn't take very long anyway. Now, one thing is we have light coming there, as I've told you before. If you don't have an obvious light source, pick one, make one, you know. That's important. Just for consistency's sake, especially since so much of what I'm doing here is kind of invented. This is sort of half-hearted dark. That's good. Okay, that will be my dedicated dark brush. This whole area is so small. That's too small. I was thinking, I want a little brush. Something with a little more dough than that. That'll probably work. Alright, so that dark green we made, you know, a lot of times I'll just, that's why I said it doesn't need to be that dark, because a lot of times I'll just start pulling it into my black. Mm-hmm. And in some cases it's just subtly lighter than the black. See, in that case, but I sort of finish things off. And this is all pretty random. It's tiny, so kind of nuts to get too nuts with that. But you know, never underestimate. In fact, I don't know if you saw this one here. What are those blobs?
These blobs?
Uh-huh.
I guess little sheep.
Yeah, they're sheep.
Is it right?
That's how we, yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's how Inez painted. That's how Inez did it, and cool. I did the same thing. It just made little blobs. And someone else came in, sheep. And I go, yeah, good. Sheep.
My second guess was hay bales, but...
Yeah, no, it's sheep. It's sheep.
You're so stoked when I said that.
Yeah. No, someone else saw it too. They said, oh, it's sheep. I'm like, well, because his thing was so abstract, more abstract than I usually work.
Oh, and you were worried people wouldn't be able to identify it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't too worried. But in fact, I mean, like almost all the studies, I'm going, you know, whatever.
What's the question? What is this?
What is it? Yeah, no, just copy what he did. Yeah. And I really don't feel like painting cows and sheep. You'll hear that on the channel. I don't really feel like painting that stuff. Alright, so we've extended the darkness with this other green, and we basically barely tapped on it, barely touched it, but that's all right, we'll put it a little more. This is not going to be green. I'll make it brown or something. Okay, that's enough of that. So this is definitely, I think, too light. Since we know black is it's composed of black and yellow, so you know you can always get it back. I want that a little richer. So if I want it richer, I mean greener. So this is the green maker. It makes everything greener. That's nice. That's what I wanted. Even though there's not a lot of it. That's too dark. So I'm always looking for a spread, you know. A simple, like in trees, 3. Really dark, less dark, medium, then light. You know, you can get subtler. I'm sure if you were working really big, you could get way subtler, but something like this. Now here's a strategy where I'm kind of doing this kind of thing. It's like this. You know, that's playing it up big to keep those edges nice. Keep those edges good. Lots of times you see too, I like to flip over the side of my brush. You know, and I'll make big marks. Like sometimes you'll see me just push a giant mark across the sky, or just do, you know, it's not like I always want to be just deet. That's not, I need that lighter. Yes, I told you this wouldn't take long to paint, hey? Because that's the other beauty bit about having your drawing kind of there. We'll have some highlights too, that would be nice. And then lots of times I come in with a little dark at the end too, just to get things back. Like,
watercolor works really well for the ground.
yeah, it works great for the ground. Less so for the sky, but it works pretty good for the sky too. And this is, I almost contemplated doing this painting on gray. That would have really supported the sky better. But it's just fine, it's fine. Yeah, no, it's perfect for landscape painting. It's one of the reasons I use it. So there I'm swinging into that wet paint, right, which is easy because it's wet. Okay, so it's time to kind of start closing things up a little. And what I might do actually is just pull in some actual burnt sienna, fake burnt sienna. So the key, and like I said, we'll have a whole lesson about this, but the key to doing good foliage, well, I told you this when you were working on your lots of red. And in many ways, this is the best red because this is brownish red. This is when it really, and there are times like, that's looking good. It's like a similar value to the green. So, but you know, when we're looking at things, we're seeing so much brown we don't even realize. Like, see, I can plop it in the middle there. You don't even notice, except that it just took something. It gives it more interest, and that's the name of the game. Okay. Now here, I do want to play up that light green more. So, just got all this pretty well filled in. But I think kind of like the clouds, before I do the highlights, I'm going to go in with my dark again. A little oil. That brush has only had dark on it. And it will feel different over wet paint. But because I've got that oil in there, it should behave pretty well. And when I do this kind of thing, I'm always going in and modifying it because it will take on a real shine, and that'll catch your eye as you're walking down the hall. So you gotta be careful about that. This is my favorite way, by the way, to do verticals. Hold the brush like that. It actually works even better than like trying to use a little tight sable or anything. Okay. Let things It's a little obfuscated. This is pretty tiny. Sometimes I'll do that just so it's not all, well, it's blending it for one. It's also at a stage before I'm going to pop in the highlights. So just kind of pulled it together, integrated it a bit. Yeah, that's good. Let's go ahead and do some highlights now. We've got this color remixed, which really isn't in the reference too much, but that's alright. It's nice. And I'm going to plop some of that in the brown there. Because that's what I want to do. Okay. It's very bright. Let's go with a little bit more yellow. And a little bit of this green, just so it's green. So you can throw that into anything and it gives it like a green feeling. The green maker. This is kind of like the clouds in reverse, right? Or not in reverse, but on the land. Things start getting defined more when you put in the lights. I don't get, well, like, oh, there's one tree with 5 trunks. And I just kind of do everything with a feeling. Oh, I don't know if that's a good plan, but a few little trunks here and there. You could, I mean, it's so tiny, I could make that a gray or a brown or something, but I'll obfuscate those a little bit in a minute. Here we want to modulate though, and I want to modulate into more of a straight up green. So that'll be permanent green on its own. Yeah, that's got a little more brownish. You don't want to say hi to you, Jerry. So the key here, just don't overwork it. It's pretty much done. And we do the, let's do some, actually sometimes what's brilliant, this is too tiny to worry about it. One thing that's brilliant though, I'll give you this, so the, you know, you got all this green, you just put in a few dots of like full out cad red.
Like in the canopies or something?
Anywhere, doesn't matter. Just like there's even a bit of red there, right? Just works good. Just like gives things another level of sophistication. This isn't even full out cad red, you know. But I noticed that the burnt sienna really wasn't asserting itself much, so a little of this, break things up. And this is also going to transition me into, I still don't really know what I'm going to do there, but I know like maybe it was pavement in the reference photo. I know I don't want to paint pavement. I don't want to paint pavement. Come on.
What about like a field?
Oh, yeah, that's not a bad idea. That's a good idea, actually. So actually, you know what's cool with fields is like, yeah, that'd be a nice payoff. And we can kind of see it there, where you come in with like.
What about like some of the yellow that you've got in the clouds? Bringing that in the.
Well, it'd be yellow, but it'd be green yellow is what I'm thinking. You'll see. Yeah. So this is yeah, it'd be a nice payoff right there. We'll do that. So let's start with some neutrally colors. Actually, it's not even the color that it is right now. Isn't so bad, right? That board color.
Yeah, it looks like it could be done.
So I'm going to go with a little darker version of that just for giggles. And when you remember that, like the rabbit of the frame will cover most of that black.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I always think on these smaller sizes especially, well you've heard from me on that, always think of that frame rabbit. I'm going pretty thin here. I'm going to modulate into some permanent green light, but I'm going to stick with the thin thing. And actually, that's kind of a tip I picked up from a recent NS I did. He had like really involved, super hard to paint sky. You could tell everything was stacked and modulated like I did here, but you know, and tons of colors and very fancy complementary color scheme. But when he got down to the earth, he just was swiping it just like I did there. It was very thin with just a little bit of green, you know. And does that do the job? Yeah, it does, pretty much. I mean, we could get more jiggy, but one thing I'd like is your idea. But I'm going to do it in the way like, this is a tip I picked up from Sheehan. So I wouldn't do that because it's got white in it, but what I would do is go, let's start with that, and get some of that, and some of that. And that's looking fake as, right? So when colors look fake, that's when you break out the raw umber. See how it makes it like way less fake, but still pretty cool. So like what we were headed for, but like more natural. So I need some oil. I always go for the oil when I need the movement. Now we'll do this in stages. That's pretty thin. That looks good though,
That's
eh?
pretty cool, yeah.
Ooh, yeah. It doesn't need to be across the whole thing either. I'm a little hesitant to do, like I said, don't like real bright things, as I'm always saying, repeating myself. I don't like too bright stuff going off the edge. Like I want my bright stuff in the middle. So I knocked it back a bit with this brown. Finished that off, but I'm going to go brighter. Yeah, Dennis Sheehan loved to do that. I picked that up from him. I do that. And it's kind of compositionally a payoff too, because you're kind of coming here, you know, moving through, in a way. Oh no. Darn it.
Good save.
Yeah. Just needed some. It was like there was like.
I was like, what?
It just needed something else there, you know what I mean? Like something else. It was that one big stroke was bothering me. That big blobby. I don't know if that's better or not, but at least the blobby stroke is gone. I see some other things there too, because once you got the land in, now you're seeing the whole painting as a thing, you know. One of them. Bring in some. Maybe yellow. Stop it, Jerry. So what I do, I put the block back in, I just cover it up. It's okay. So at this point, this kind of move is like just pulling the whole painting together. Still a lot those things are always fight me. I always see me working on those over and over. Any straight lines like that, I just think. I mean, I go for them. I go after it. But go for it. Whoops. Alright, what do you think that's with that? We do want to go brighter with this though. I think you could really go pretty bright. It just makes everything else feel rich, hey? Oh, that's a little more than I wanted, but that's alright. And here we'll knock it back a little. Maybe bring in some. And again, I kind of come up with this like sort of Z thing. When I subdivided that, as you can see, there's not much to go on there. I like that. Yeah. So last thing is like where I put these little strokes, they look like they just need to be, finished off a little, so they're not so obvious. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's done. What do you think?
It's so cool.
Boom!
Good job.
Yeah. Just zoom in on it. Hey. Yep, so yeah, I'll put that video up.